Danny McBride addresses the fan criticism of Halloween Ends. You gotta hear this one. Let's go. Hey guys, what's going on? I wanted to talk about Halloween Ends, and I wanted to talk about some of the criticism that was placed on the movie, and also the response from Danny McBride, who's addressing one of the biggest criticisms, which is obviously the small amount of screen time that Michael has in the film. Now, it's really interesting to me because we just had a chance to talk with James Drew Courtney himself. By the way, if you haven't seen the interview, please check it out. It was really, really interesting, and he touched upon a little bit of this. But it's really interesting because I think that the film did a lot of really cool things, but I also think that the film had some missed opportunities. Now, I want to talk about that first and then get to Danny McBride. Number one, I think that the character of Corey was an interesting way to show how evil is quote unquote born. You know, how this evil that Michael had within him, and it has spread to the town and into Lori and so forth. You know, seeing kind of the beginnings of those things. That was Corey's job. That's what his character was. And I thought that was really interesting. But and I've said this many times, and I've heard many other people say it too, I think it would have been cooler. I think it would have been better story wise if Corey was a character that was introduced before the third movie. And I think you would have been more invested in him. I think there would have been, you would have gotten to know him a little bit better and so forth. Plus, it could have been a really cool reveal or twist, especially if he was either, a friend of Allison's, maybe he was her boyfriend, or maybe, anything like that. I think it could have been a lot, it could have been a better choice. Now, that being said, he was great in the movie. Rowan Campbell was great in the movie. I enjoyed his performance. I did enjoy the character of Corey. I just think that he should have been introduced before that. Now, here's where we get into the troublesome area. The screen time for Michael Myers. Now, to me, I think they could have easily had at least 2 more scenes with Michael. At least given him maybe another 10 minutes of screen time. And I think that would have caused most fans to be a little bit more open to the movie. Myself, I would have liked to seen a little bit more of him too. I understand what they were trying to do though. And the truth of the matter is, he had more screen time in Ends than he did in Halloween 78. So go figure. But Danny McBride was really it was interesting hearing his take on it, because he thinks that the criticism from the fans, it's a valid point. It's a valid point, and he understands how the fans are looking at it. David Gordon Green, and Jamie Lee Curtis, and most of everyone involved with the film, even James Drew Courtney himself, they knew that this was going to be a movie that would really challenge the fans and probably would be divisive. So at least they knew that ahead of time. Again, do you really want to go down that road? I don't know. It is what it is. But Danny McBride was in an interview, and he had said that I think that it's a valid criticism. All 3 of these movies was really David Gordon Green's sort of brainchild. He had a very distinct idea of what he wanted to do with this. And I just felt lucky that he brought me along for the ride to help him where I could and try to give him anything I could on it. And when he told me his pitch for focusing on this Corey character, I thought that it was cool. I thought it was a smart take on it. I thought that it was a way to avoid repetition and sort of explore something a little different and still tying it into what Halloween's ultimately about. Now, Danny McBride isn't wrong in anything he said. Of course, it's his opinion, so it is what it is. But, I think the thing with Halloween Ends is they were trying to do some different things. They were trying to do different things with all 3 movies. And I have to give them a lot of credit on that when you have a franchise that's been around for so long. Imagine if, all 3 of these films had, characters that weren't really developed. Um, and it was just kind of like basically Michael killing, people each movie with no real stakes or no real connection to these characters and so forth. If these movies were kind of run of the mill, then the fans would have been upset about that. Rightly so, because they would say, well, we've seen this before. Why do we need these movies? And I think one thing that they did really well with each film is each film had something it was trying to say, it was trying to do. Um, Especially in the sense of taking Michael as a character and really bringing forth this idea of his evil and how it can affect a person, you know. And it was different for a lot of these characters. And that's the other thing too. We had these different characters that you really could get invested in, whether you liked them or not. You really could get invested in them. Whereas, there's a lot of characters in the Halloween movies, and I've seen all of the movies a lot of times over all these years since I was a kid. And there are some characters that they just kind of like, they're there. They're there to get killed. And I think that when you look at, Laurie's family, and you look at Allison, and you look at Cameron, and you look at people from the town, some of the other parents, like Lonnie, and so forth and so forth. I think that they really tried to, give some interesting layers to these characters so that when things were happening, you actually were invested in them. That's something you don't see. You don't see that a lot of times in slasher horror films, and especially one that's been around for so long, like this franchise. But each film was trying to do something a little bit different. With 2018 focusing on Laurie, her story as far as what the events of 78 did to her and how it affected her whole adult life, how it affected her child, and ultimately her granddaughter. So that was really interesting seeing that as a base, for 2018. And of course, Michael's escape and him going on a rampage, that kind of was, that was the icing on the cake. With Kills, you kind of flipped everything on its side, because now Laurie isn't the focus of that movie. She still has a huge presence, but now it's focused on her daughter and her granddaughter, reeling from the events of 2018, but also the town, in a real sense of how that paranoia could infect people in a town, and especially a small town like Haddonfield. And then you go into Ends, and that theme is played out even further, because now it almost seems like with Ends, and we've talked about Ends a lot. I do want to talk about it even some more, because it's really interesting that you have things that it did really well and you had things that it didn't do so well. It's still an enjoyable film to me, but it definitely had missed opportunities. But the thing about Ends is that it takes those elements and Kills, and it goes into a little bit of a different direction to me in two ways. One is Corey's character, because we literally are seeing the beginnings of evil, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's almost like, not saying it's Michael reincarnated, but we're seeing how those things kind of play out, right? But it was also like, it seemed like the town, who was already infected by that evil shown in Halloween Kills, now in Ends, with Michael having been gone, he had disappeared out of sight, and it was showing that it seemed like now that the town needed Michael. They needed that person to put the blame on, and Michael wasn't around, so they put blame on Corey when he had the accident, when he was babysitting. But then they also put the blame on Laurie, the different scenes where people were just pointing their fingers at Laurie, even Allison herself saying, you're boogeyman, Corey's mother saying, you're boogeyman, and this and that. So it was really interesting, because now we were seeing a different angle of that infection from the evil. And I enjoyed that. Should it have been, played out a little bit differently as far as the time, the amount of time given to certain characters? Yes, I think so, personally. but it is what it is. It's still some interesting things because you literally see people, and the father of the child that died in the beginning, that was being babysat by Corey, he said it really well. He said that he was upset that people in the town were taking his tragedy and making it about them. And of course, we know that this is so true in the real world. And we see that in the everyday world, where people will take a tragedy and kind of look at that tragedy through their lens instead of the victim or the survivor's lens. And all of a sudden, they go on a soapbox and they're making it about them. You know what I mean? That happens all the time, which is too bad. So I think that that's what this movie was saying in a lot of ways. And Michael is the icing on the cake. You know what I mean? He's the icing on the cake. But it was just interesting regardless. And Danny McBride also, when he said that they were trying to do something where they weren't just repeating old beats, I can understand that. I really can. And the truth of the matter is, you can either repeat what you've seen before or do something different. And you're really damned if you do, damned if you don't with fans, especially very passionate fans. But that also means that you have passionate fans. And James Drew Courtney talked about that as well, is that the one thing that is really good about the different opinions with this trilogy, and especially Ends, is that you have passionate fans. You have passionate fans that love it, that hate it, that wanted something different, that were okay with it, and so forth. So I think that that's what makes this conversation so interesting. And as a huge Halloween fan, it makes it interesting for me. And when I talk about it, when I make videos about it and talk to you guys, whether it be in the live stream or in the comment section of the video, because there's so many ways that you can really look at this. Again, when I was a kid, looking back at Halloween Season of the Witch, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, I absolutely hated it. Didn't get it, didn't want to get it, didn't want to give it a chance. Now, it's a favorite of mine. I think it's a very good film. I know what they were trying to do, and I'm glad that they did what they did. One thing that they should have done differently for that, as well as Halloween Ends, is the marketing. The marketing for Season of the Witch, it didn't let you know, okay, Michael Myers is not in this movie. They didn't market it correctly. And for Halloween Ends, I think they marketed that incorrectly as well, because they made the movie seem, and granted, the diehard Halloween fans like myself, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching, I think we all knew that there was going to be more than just this Michael versus Laurie thing. I made many videos about what I thought that the movie would be. And I knew that Michael versus Laurie would be something, but I knew that wasn't going to be the whole movie. But the marketing made it seem like they were about to go to war and they're just ready to tear at each other. The truth of the matter is that Laurie Strode was a character that had come to terms with her events, her trauma. She had become a peaceful person within herself, and she had moved on. And then, of course, with Michael, we found out that he doesn't want anything to do with Laurie Strode. He just is what he is, and so he's on a different path. But that marketing, and I suppose maybe the marketing was doing that for the fans that aren't hardcore. Maybe that's the case, but if so, I think it still was the wrong thing to do. You guys let me know what you think about that as well. But anyways, Danny McBride, he's calling out David Gordon Green and everyone in a way, by acknowledging that it's a valid criticism of the movie to not have Michael in it as much. But he's also saying the reason that they did it was to try to do something different in the franchise. And I get it. At the end of the day, if I had a choice between doing the same old thing and trying something that's different, I'd try something different. Now he said they were still trying to be what a Halloween movie is about. And of course they did. It was about evil. It was about that evil that was within Michael and how it affects a person. We saw how it affects a person like Corey. So anyways, you guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This is a conversation that, literally, we could go days and days and days on this thing. But let me know what you guys think about what Danny McBride said. Let me know what you think about Halloween Ends, the good and the bad, because there is good and bad. And I'm okay with that as well. So Anyways, hit the like button. It helps to support us. We'd appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the Night Watch Zone, do it. This is the time to do it. Hit the notification bell and so forth. And I'll catch you guys later. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.